Let's have it. Sing Street the musical. If not, let's create one ourselves. We'll just sing all the songs.
I told you I was listening to the soundtrack this morning. I was singing along with most of them.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast, where we discuss the world of film from a fresh angle. And now your host, Robert Yanis Jr.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast. This is Rob. On this show, we democratize the film criticism conversation, bringing on fans and critics alike to talk about a film that really means something to them, something that they grew up with or something that they felt a personal connection to, which can range from foreign films to indie blockbuster, to indies, to blockbusters, to you name it. So today, I am thrilled to join Dane Mychal of the CF3 Podcast to the show. Welcome to the show, Dane.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
So your podcast is Cult Fans, Films, and Finds. So tell me a little bit about how your show got started and, why cult films? What is it about cult films that makes you want to do an entire show about them?
Well, I'm a huge fan of the show Mystery Science Theater 3000, and my co-host on the show, Jeff Johnson, is somebody who I did not know until we banded together on a Kickstarter campaign to help bring back Mystery Science Theater 3000 to Netflix. So I actually wound up meeting him in person. He's from Milwaukee. I'm from Omaha area. And actually wound up meeting him at the premiere after the successful Kickstarter campaign. They did 3 premieres, one in New York, one in LA, and one in Chicago. And so we went to the one closest to us, Chicago, and met in person, have become friends over the past couple of years. And for 2 years, we've been talking about wanting to start a podcast. But as you know, Rob, how difficult it can be to actually do that. Mm-hmm. If you don't know what you're doing, you just kind of have to learn, trial by fire. Exactly. So a few months ago, we decided to just go for it and bought all the equipment and, cult film. That's what brought us together was Mystery Science Theater 3000, which, yes, they riff cult films, but they truly do appreciate them as well, just as we do. So that's the impetus for our the creation of that podcast. So.
And we were talking a little bit before we started this recording about how great things are going for the show. You've been really getting some really fun guests. And I think the great thing about cult film is that it's a specific niche, but it also touches on so many different genres. I mean, sci-fi, horror, like martial arts, like there's literally any genre can fit into that category. So it's, in a way, it still kind of gives you a large range of topics to touch on. Absolutely.
I mean, there are some films that we would stay away from, like, Amadeus is never going to be covered on our podcast. But, we've kind of considered pushing the envelope a few times, like an episode we've talked about doing just because of a potential guest is The Mighty Ducks. And that's a Disney movie that was pretty big at the box office. Is that a cult film? That's pushing the envelope, but, we're not so, stuck on doing a certain thing that we would say no to that. I mean, if we could get them on there, we would absolutely do The Mighty Ducks. But a lot of the times you'll see that we do horror. We just did Return of the Living Dead, for example, and Creepshow 2 the week before that. But we do vary it up. We're going to record an episode for Twister tomorrow, so disaster movies as well.
Nice. So in your mind, what is kind of the as close as you can get to a definition of cult film? Because I think to me there's some films that I've seen referenced. I've seen Office Space or films like that references. Princess Bride I saw referenced as a cult film. So it's like it's started as a cult film because it wasn't as financially successful initially, and then has since basically recognized as a classic. So is there a certain level, like, is it budget? Is it audience? Like what, and you mentioned Mighty Ducks. I think that's an interesting like cross section between nostalgia and cult film. So like, how do you define that when you're looking for films to discuss?
It's so difficult. I mean, we haven't outright rejected anyone's idea yet when they've suggested a film, but I think it has to do with the following as much as anything. Like, who's following these films? Does it have a following that lasts? Are they obsessive about it? For example, The Big Lebowski, absolutely a cult film because they do a festival every year, Lebowski Fest.
Right.
Those are the types of movies that we really would try to hone in on. Now, we did The Goonies for the same reason. Goonies has a festival in Astoria, but it was a Spielberg production, directed by Richard Donner. It had big names attached to it at the time. I mean, they were kids, but big names.
Right.
But it has a cult following, and there's a DVD called The Goonies, the unauthorized story of the making of a cult classic. I was like, oh, well, there's a DVD that somebody spent years making, and they're calling it a cult classic. So we can do it on our podcast, I think.
Exactly. Well, that's kind of an interesting segue because I'm really hoping that the film we're talking about this week, which was not a box office success, that this ends up having some kind of a cult following. I'm not sure if that's happening or not. We'll get into that in a minute. But I guess this is as good a time as any to say that we're going to be talking about the 2016 John Carney film Sing Street. So let's listen to a little bit of the trailer right now.
Who knows what this new prison will do for you? This is your time.
Who is she? She's beautiful. How come you're not in school?
I'm a model.
Cool. Do you want to be in a video for my band?
See, if you're in a band, sing me a song.
Take on me. We need to form a band.
Conor's putting a band together.
Oh, good jeez.
You'd play every instrument known to mankind.
Probably.
Show 'em.
It's all about the girl, isn't it?
What's this?
Homework.
I have school in the morning.
This is school. Rock and roll is a risk. You risk being ridiculed.
Jesus, what are you all wearing?
Yeah, we're just working that out. That's great fun.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Have you kissed her yet?
She's got a boyfriend. Pulled off in his car, music blaring.
What was he listening to?
Genesis.
No woman can truly love a man who listens to Phil Collins.
That was a little bit of the trailer for Sing Street from writer-director John Carney. So, Dane, what was your initial experience with this film? Did you see it in theaters? When did you first discover it? And why is this the one you wanted to talk about? I mean, I know how it came up on Twitter, but between us, just maybe tell the listener.
Yeah, so I didn't know that this was even a movie. I didn't know it was ever in theaters, and if it was anywhere near me, that was totally lost on me. And I should point out that I don't just like and follow cult films. I'm also an Oscarologist. So I do track Oscar fare as well. Nice. And do wind up seeing small indie features quite a bit during fall and winter during that time of year. I'm usually pretty well researched in that regard. But I had no idea about this film until my friend Joe told me that it was on Netflix. And it came to Netflix, I believe, fairly quickly because I saw it in 2016 when it came out. Mm-hmm. And I saw it before the Oscars that year. I'd already seen it because I remember I hadn't seen it by the time a song was nominated for the Golden Globes, Drive It Like You Stole It. And I had seen it shortly after the Globes and was hoping against hope that it would get a Best Original Song nomination at the Oscars. It did not.
No, it did not.
I saw it on Netflix, and it instantly made me ridiculously happy, as it has every time I've watched it ever since. It's just a life-affirming film. I wanted to talk about it because it instantly became my favorite movie of 2016 after I saw it. It has not been topped and never will be topped, and it's actually quickly entering my top 10 all-time films.
I actually would probably put this, obviously, in my favorite. It's very much my favorite film of 2016, like by a significant margin. And that's a year that had a lot of really great films. But I would probably put this at least in my top 25 films, like my favorite movies. And it's interesting because I liked Once, because this is from the same filmmaker as Once and Begin Again. I liked Begin Again quite a bit, and I liked Once as well. But this film, like you were saying, I had such a strong emotional reaction to. So I saw this at a critic screening, I don't know, a couple months before it's, I guess, whatever release it had, which is very limited because it actually just made a total of a little over $3 million at the domestic box office. And I'm pretty sure that qualifies it as the lowest grossing film I've covered on this podcast since relaunching it several months ago. It's so, do the math. Every week we've talked about a different movie, and this is the lowest grossing by quite a bit. And overseas, considering that it's kind of an Irish co-production and everything, it made only 10 million overseas. So a box office total of 13 million worldwide. And I came out of the theater, and one of the other critics, John Carney had made Once and Begin Again, very similarly stories about people coping with, a crossroads in their life or somehow finding solace or healing or personal connection or whatever through music. And so one of the critics, I remember saying something like along the lines of, "Oh yeah, that was fine. I mean, when is he going to do something else?" And I was totally floored by this film when I saw it. And I did see when it came up on Netflix, I watched it a couple of times, and then they took it off of Netflix, so I had to buy the Blu-ray because it's very rare to me that I see a film this small and this unassuming and this out of nowhere that soars to become one of my favorites. We should just, I guess, lay down the basics of the plot before we get really deep into it. So this is basically a musical coming-of-age comedy drama, and it's set in 1980s in Ireland, and it follows a teen named Conor, played by Ferdia Walsh-Peelo, who I've never seen before or since in anything, which is unfortunate because he's really good in this film. And yes, he's starting at a new Christian Brothers school called Sing Street, SYNGE. Of course, that's what he bases the name of the band of. And then from there meets a girl, of course. Every story about a teen boy starts with a girl, really. Raphina, played by Lucy Boynton, who's now been in Murder on the Orient Express and Bohemian Rhapsody. She's, I believe, dating Rami Malek. And the band, it really just starts as a way to impress her. So off I feel like this movie sucks you in right from minute one, where they play, what was the name of the song? Stay Clean by Motorhead over the credits. Yes. So it brings you into the era, and then you don't waste any time. I think to back it up a second, the first scene, he's overhearing his parents arguing. And
yes, and he's writing a song.
It's inspiration for it. So what was it like? Were you hooked from the first scene, or what was your process going in to watch this? Especially since it sounds like you just discovered it on Netflix, basically.
Oh well, everything you're describing here is like my favorite things in movies. So, coming of age story, one of my favorite subgenres. Check. Period piece set in the 80s, which is my favorite decade. Check. Movie about musicians. Check. I was in a band for 10 years in my 20s. So I'm quite familiar with music and the songwriting process and all of that. So everything that you're talking about here is just fodder for me to love this movie. In addition, I was a huge and still am a huge fan of Once. I've been to Ireland a couple times, going back next year. Purposely went out and scouted Once filming locations and took a bunch of pictures, and can now say I've been to, the music store where they played Falling Slowly.
Oh, wow.
For example. And funny side story, my brother actually sang Falling Slowly as the female part with Glenn Hansard at a huge Pearl Jam 20 concert in Wisconsin. He was selected to go up on stage.
Oh my God.
There's footage of it on YouTube. And my brother is co-host, the other co-host of the CF3 podcast, along with myself and Jeff. So that's funny. We'll be posting that someday, I'm sure, when it comes up on the show. But so, yeah, I was already a huge John Carney fan and Ireland fan. Now, you mentioned the small box office take internationally. People in Ireland don't go see movies because I talked to Irish people about once, and most of them don't even know what it is. So, and that's sad to me. But yeah, everything about this, I was loving it from the get-go.
Yeah, I'm not a musician, but I'm a writer, and I, obviously interested in creative outlets and all that stuff. I have a podcast. So that was, I mean, even though I don't have any personal experience writing songs, I feel like the film's version of the creative process just really hit home, and it felt more real than most movies that normally cover this kind of ground, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. I love it. There's a scene where Cosmo, we'll call him because that's what he renames himself.
Right.
When Cosmo shows up at his friend's house and he's like, "Do you want to write a song?" Because he's feeling emotions, and he's like, "I gotta put this into song." Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I've been in that situation before. That's awesome. And his friend's like, "Absolutely," So he gets it, and that's the dynamic between those two is one of my favorite things about the film.
And really, in a way, it's the film is almost kind of, I mean, it's not a fantasy film, but in a way it has, like, there's two worlds. And this comes into play most obviously in the Drive It Like You Stole It sequence.
Yes.
That there's the world where his parents are on the verge of divorce, where his brother, used to be a very successful student and on, in college doing well, whatever, and then flunked out and has basically become, I guess, kind of a slacker, and where he's now taken out of his element and put into the school where there's a bully that constantly wants to beat the shit out of him. There's like the brother Baxter in charge of the whole school is out to get him for the color of his shoes, which inspires another song later on. So there's like the harsh reality that Cosmo has to deal with, and then the escape that he finds in his art, which you see whenever he goes over to his friend's house and they're writing music. And by the way, I just want to throw out, I love all those kids, the supporting kids, not Cosmo and Raphina, who obviously get the bulk of the screen time. All of them were so much fun in this movie. And
perfect casting.
Darren,
yes.
The manager, and like all of it. It was so much fun, and they create this little family as a way to escape all of their individual issues. I mean, even Barry, the bully, gets in on it at one point, becomes the bouncer because you find out he's got an abusive like alcoholic father at home. So everybody uses creativity as their way out. And I love the way that Drive It Like You Stole It sort of embodies that.
I love that you mentioned Barry because I had written that down in my notes, that I love how John Carney found a way to even humanize the bully and assimilate him into the gang and make him somehow use that aggression for positive. If there's a way. The only real villain in the movie winds up being the headmaster. And I wonder if Carney had trouble with making him just a flat out bad guy and not giving him some reason or, reason behind why he's acting the way he is. But I guess he's saying that there are some people that are just jerks and there's no real reason for it. So,
well, it's also, to me, the film, and this is part of why I think I get so transported by it, is so clearly told from the perspective of a teen boy that, you idolize your brother. The pretty girl across the street is like this goddess in your eyes. The headmaster is an asshole. You know what I mean? Like you seeing things from Cosmo's perspective and not really far beyond it. It's not until later in the film that he really gets a clearer picture of what Raphina's life is really like. And starts to understand his brother a little bit, and we'll get into Jack Rayner, I'm sure, in a little bit here. And so I think it's such a, if so much of filmmaking is the voice behind it, the voice that John Carney perfects here is so perfect.
Yeah, I like. So there's a few quotes that I wrote down from Cosmo that I think really convey kind of what he's trying to say with his story. So he has Cosmo, when he's supposed to describe his genre of music, he's like, "I'm a futurist, no nostalgia, no looking backwards, just forward." I thought that was awesome. Like that's what this movie is going to be. It's not going to be him dwelling on things like his parents' marriage dissolving. Mm-hmm. He's living out his life, and he's determined to keep looking forward and make the necessary changes to be happy. And that's what he wants for Raphina similarly. So there's a scene where he says, she says, "So that's my life now, working at McDonald's, hanging out with a 15-year-old schoolboy. I'm exactly like my mom." So that's somebody looking backwards and not being happy. And he's saying, you know what? I'm not going to have any of this. And so he just says, I have to go. I have a gig I have to rehearse for or whatever. Mm-hmm. And she's like, so tell me about that. And he's like, no. I thought that was the bravest line that anybody could have ever written for a teen boy who's, in love with this girl, to have him stand up to her and say, no, like I'm better than being called just a 15-year-old boy. I have better things to do. And if you love me, you'll come find me.
I mean, and early on, what is she supposed to be? Maybe 17, like a couple years older than him, not a whole lot.
Right.
And even at the very beginning, she's like, "Oh, you're the kid in the band." like she's such an adult, I guess, because of the life that she's led, things like that. But you mention his. First of all, let's mention that some of the Raphina and Cosmo conversations. Like, I love the thing about being happy, sad. That comes up at one point where they're talking. I think he learns from his brother. What is it, The Cure, I believe, and he says that they're happy, sad. I loved that. I think there's a lot of. They both have such distinct perspectives, and they learn a lot about each other over the about themselves over the course of their relationship.
Yeah, I mean, she teaches him too. When she says you can never do anything by half, when she just jumps in the water, she goes for it. Like, she's imparting wisdom on him too. It goes both ways. So,
and that's when he kisses her, I believe, and then he asks about the other guy, and she's like, "Oh, you ruined it."
Exactly. He's learning.
It's typical for a teen boy to say the wrong thing. But his process, you said about him being a futurist. What I like about you see the creative process with him and his band, and them creating the songs and shooting the music video for Riddle of the Model initially, and you're able to track the progression and their songwriting and their music videos and everything, just like little by little evolving. The scrappiness of the Riddle of the Model, which I love. I love the way that with the vampire teeth and like the ridiculous outfits, none of them are matched. And the way that they work with those things, it really, I mean, it made me wish that I had been more creative as a kid, as their age, because I didn't really pursue a lot of those things at that age. And I wish that I could have been one of those kids running around with a video camera or something. So it's nice to kind of live vicariously through these characters. But a lot of the futurism thing, at least, comes directly from his brother, who's basically counseling him in popular music and trying to kind of give him a push in that direction. What do you think about the relationship between him and his brother and how that plays out over the course of the film?
Oh my God! I mean, Jack Rayner's character might be I think he's the second most important character in the movie after Cosmo. I mean, you could make the argument for Raphina, but I mean, it says right there before the end credits roll, for brothers everywhere. And the first time I saw this movie, I didn't get it. But then when I saw that, I saw that just before the credits start rolling, it's like a light turned on in my head. And I only have a brother, one older brother, who has imparted, we were in the band together as well. He has imparted his musical taste on me just the same way that Jack Rayner's character does here. And like, I cry most of the time during that last scene. I didn't today, but I've seen the movie probably 15 times, I would say. And I usually do cry during that last scene. And it's just because of the relationship with the brother. It's so well done. I mean, you mentioned seeing his progression through music, and it's music that his brother's introducing to him. But I love how you can listen to so there's a scene where they're listening to Duran Duran, and then he comes up with Riddle of the Model. There's the scene where they're listening to The Cure, and then he comes up with A Beautiful Sea. There's the scene where they're listening to I can't remember the Hall & Oates song. Why can't I? Maneater?
Yes,
is it Maneater?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And then he comes up with Drive It Like You Stole It. So like these songs, by the way, these are perfect representations of a kid imitating what he's hearing on 80s radio. They're just absolutely perfect. But yeah, to get back to Jack Rayner's character, like how that wasn't given Oscar attention, that role, that's just brilliant. Like I don't understand how it gets ignored, but
I'm so glad you said that, because I was going to bring that up. So we mentioned earlier that the fact that Drive It Like You Stole It wasn't nominated for Best Original Song is ridiculous. Especially, I think La La Land, which is a movie I like, got 2 nominations. It's like, really? We know it's going to probably win score. I personally thought that it should have squeezed in somewhere. You don't need to give La La Land 2 song nominations. But my big one was I was almost equally, if not more, hoping for Jack Rayner to get a Best Supporting Actor, because the brother dynamic is the heart of the movie in a lot of ways. I think that's kind of the part of the trick that the movie plays on you. It comes in and you think it's going to be about the romance, and that's an integral part of it. But ultimately, it's his relationship with Brendan that's what really helps him grow, and it helps him and Raphina find their way to pursue their dreams, to make it out of their little Irish town and head across to London. And I am an older brother, so I related to him as much as, if not more, than Cosmo. So like the scenes, everything with him, like the way he's trying to mentor his brother with the music, but he's also trying to clue him in on what's going on in their parents' marriage, but also at the same time trying to shield him from some of that. All of that rang so true to me. And then, of course, Rayner has his big breakdown scene late in the film where he's talking about, before you came around, it was just me. And, they were. He
macheted.
I loved it.
Through the bullshit or whatever it was. Was that you in your family, Rob? You macheted through the bullshit.
I guess so. And he's like, I was a fucking jet engine. That whole thing, I loved it. That should have been an Oscar clip, and it's annoying to me that it didn't, because I think he is the heart and soul of this movie, and he's bearing the brunt. And I think you see this a lot in a lot of family dynamics. My wife and I each have only one sibling, and she's a younger sibling and I'm the older sibling, so we kind of cancel each other out in that way. But I'm always telling her that, like, as the older sibling, you sort of feel that weight of responsibility. You feel that, well, I need to try and hold together my siblings and my parents and be there for everybody. Like, you feel like a lot of weight on you, and that really comes across on screen in Jack Rayner's performance.
Yeah, it's incredible. And Rob, I know I've listened to the Crooked Table podcast a little bit, and I know you're a huge Star Wars fan. So I don't know if you know this, but Jack Rayner was in the running to play Han Solo in Solo: A Star Wars Story. He was very early in the running.
I did hear that.
If you take a look at his headshots, you very quickly start to see, and there's no way you'll notice it in Sing Street, so don't look there. But look at like his headshots. I mean, there's a striking resemblance to young Harrison Ford. I absolutely could have seen it. Now, Alden, I think his name is, that they went with.
Yeah.
He's fine, but he doesn't have, to me, the Harrison Ford look. And I think Rayner actually could have pulled that off. But even though he's Irish, he's proved that he's such a talented actor that I think he would have been able to do just fine. But
I feel like, and I don't know if this is me now totally pulling something out of my ass and fan casting, but I feel like I've heard his name surrounding Batman at one point. I could totally see him in something like that. And that's not to say that he needs a franchise, because I would be fine with him doing more of this kind of work, but that's really how you catapult your career these days. I mean, look at Chris Hemsworth, who nobody knew a few years ago, and now he's in what's probably going to be the biggest movie of all time.
Right. I mean, he was just a throwaway captain in a Star Trek movie.
Exactly.
And now look who he is. But yes, people deserve to make money based on their performances in this movie. We already know Lucy Boynton's headed that way. Jack has had some decent roles since then, but the friend, I can't remember his name. in the movie, the friend with the glasses. Rabbit Stuff is what I call him.
Oh, yeah.
Just because that's how he answers when somebody asks what he's up to. Rabbit Stuff. He's got his own YouTube series where he's the lead character.
Oh,
so
nice.
So yeah, it's nice to see some of these people getting noticed from this movie, since the movie itself didn't make money and get nearly enough notice. But if these people start making it big, a lot of people are going to go back and watch this, and it's going to become the cult classic that it should be.
That's what I was saying up front. This could be something you could cover on your show at some point, hopefully.
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to. It'll just wind up being me singing every single song from the soundtrack, because I've listened to it. I kid you not. I had it in my CD player in my car for like a year straight. So I've listened to it hundreds of times.
Same. I bought the CD, and then I actually listened to the whole soundtrack this morning, getting myself mentally prepped and hyped up for this episode. I guess that's a good segue to talking about the music itself. So we talked about some of the 80s music. They have Rio by Duran Duran and some stuff by The Cure, Hall & Oates, Joe Jackson, a lot of that other stuff. But the original music, I think, is what the real highlight is. And that was composed by Danny Wilson frontman Gary Clark, and then actually John Carney and a couple of his bandmates from the band Relish worked on most of it, it sounds like. So I guess, should we just go through the original Sing Street songs and just kind of do little by little? Okay, so Riddle of the Model, the song, I love this. I love the song. The music video, I think, sells it even more so. And that's obviously the Duran Duran one. Because I love the fact that you can tell this is just a bunch of kids who don't know what they're doing, throwing this video together, and the Asian inspired riff.
Dun, 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 dun. Yes, that's great.
I think I don't remember who brings that. Is it Raphina that suggests that? I forget exactly. But what do you think about Riddle of the Model as, I guess, sort of their entrance into like their creative statement?
I get it, because it's not the best song that they come up with by a long shot, but it still has the hook that would make you believe that Raphina would dig it enough to take time out of her day to show up and do these kids' makeup, in addition to starring as the model in the video. I mean, it's believable, and it's also believable as a Duran Duran inspired song, because that's what really gets him into wanting to start a band, is seeing on Top of the Pops how amazing Duran Duran is. And it becomes a moment that even their family can come together and discuss, in a positive light, except for Littlefinger. The dad is kind of negative towards it, but
well, I mean, and that's the other really cute thing as the older brother watching this movie, is that he starts quoting his older brother about,
and misquotes him.
Yeah, well, yes. but he's like he's just, taking that inspiration out into the world. And I mean, as Brandon says, rock and roll is a risk. They risk being ridiculed. So I think Riddle of the Model is a really solid starting point. Like, even in that very minute beginnings of what Sing Street the band would ultimately become, there is something there, as you pointed out. I really love Up. My Up might be almost my second favorite of the original Sing Street songs.
So Up, I rank as my favorite.
Really? Okay, so we're not that far off.
It's my favorite. I love that. I love ballads. It's not too, for me, there's one song, I can't remember what it's called, but it's the one that's super slow, the love song. That's a little too slow to be my favorite, but this strikes the right balance between pop goodness, a ballad, and it's got an amazing hook. I don't understand why that wasn't in consideration as well for Golden Globes, Oscars, what have you.
Right. So, I know, I agree, and I like that it comes back later in the film. It's like the sad version. Is on the soundtrack. They call it the bedroom mix. It's almost it's weird because it made me think of Team America: World Police, where it's like America. Fuck yeah, they have like the slow version later on.
Yes.
So I like the way that it comes back into play, and I agree with you. Up is an outstanding song. I think the one you were thinking of that was even slower is To Find You.
Yes.
I like that one as well. But if you could, I don't know. there's something specific about Up. It has the idealism in it that I think really captures what Cosmo, like where he starts early in this film, the way he sees Raphina. I forget if they did what the video is for Up. I don't know if they did a video for it in the film.
They didn't make a video,
right,
as far as I know, but they just show like montages while it's playing, I think. So I think that's more of what it is. To Find You, though, I really love the lyrics for that. I think that's a showcase for that. Plus, you can tell how difficult it was for Ferdia to sing that one because it's completely stripped down. And so he's basically, there's nothing to hide behind for his voice there. So I love how vulnerable he sounds in it because it goes really well with what he's saying, so that's a great song as well.
Yeah, that's the melancholy track on the Sing Street soundtrack, basically. And then we have A Beautiful Sea, which obviously gets an entire sequence devoted to it. That's when where she jumps in the water and I think her idea was that she's gonna turn into a mermaid and then she's heading back to the water and that whole thing. I really like that, and that's, as we mentioned earlier, that was a pivotal moment for their relationship as well, and not just the creative evolution of the band.
He was inspired to write that after listening to The Cure. So I just watched The Cure inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and it's not quite on that level of greatness, but it is a good song as well. And it does, like you said, it does lead to an important part of the movie. So I like it quite a bit.
That's his happy, sad song. And then, of course, the song that everybody is still talking about in relation to this movie, Drive It Like You Stole It, which works for me not only because you see in that sequence the fantasy world starting to cross over into like his escapism with music, starting to cross over into his family life where he imagines everyone coming in there and his parents are together and happy, and Raphina is being, but like basically the thing with Raphina is very Back to the Future inspired, as they mentioned in the movie.
Yes.
So I love that. I love the fact that they're Irish kids looking at an American film, be like, like that American movie, Back to the Future. Doing like 1950s dancing. He's trying to coach the crowd on how to act for the video, and the reveal at the end, that how that's really playing out when he's performing the song. I loved all that so much, and that's, I guess, probably the most re-listenable as far as like the poppiest, like the one that feels like it did just come ripped out from the 1980s and popped into 2016.
Yeah, and if you've had the soundtrack, so you've heard it obviously recorded with the professional singer, those versions don't hold up to me as much as
not at all.
The kids performing it. I actually don't even know why they would want it on the soundtrack, to be honest with you. But yeah, I loved it. I love that whole sequence. He clearly wanted this to be his Enchantment Under the Sea dance moment. It did not happen for him.
No,
but,
unfortunately.
Again, it leads to pivotal, necessary moments in the film later to follow. So,
plus, it's also what Raphina says: you can't do anything by half. It's just about drive it like you stole it, live your life the way you want to. It's a liberation song, is what it is. And
yes.
It's if this story is a coming of age of him from this, this kid in his bedroom hearing his parents fight and has nowhere to express himself and nowhere to really be himself, doesn't even really know who he is at that point, to then just get so confident where he's, trying out different looks at school and he's wearing makeup that Brother Baxter washes off in a kind of a violent manner. All of that, this is his coming out party, I guess, as it were. This is his coming of age has arrived, essentially, and I love the celebration of that. And
would you say that he's risking being ridiculed, taking his brother's advice?
For sure,
driving it like he stole it.
Exactly.
His brother is just full of great advice. So
he is. And then he does a couple of songs. I guess we could mention the sequence later on. They end up playing at a school dance, and they're performing. It's essentially the last hurrah for the band Sing Street in the film. just because they do girls, which is fine. I never really. It's honestly, it's probably the original song by Sing Street on here that I usually kind of skip the most.
Oh, I don't skip it ever because I love it. It's really short. It only takes like 2 minutes of your time, I think. And yeah, they don't introduce the writing process of that or even mention it before it's being played. Yeah, I totally appreciate, though, the inclusion of it in there to show that, yes, this band was working on lots of material so that they could actually play a full show. It makes it more realistic than, when I've seen, take, for example, if you've ever seen the show Goldbergs, they play gigs with only one song. They only show them ever practicing or singing one song, and then they book a gig. I'm like, what the hell else are these guys like playing? But that just adds to the believability that they're willing to go the extra mile to come up with another song. And it's catchy. It's got a good hook. So I never skip Girls. I like it.
I don't dislike it. It's just when you have songs like Drive It Like You Stole It and Up and A Beautiful Sea, like songs that play more integrals in the plot, it's I don't really have the emotional connection to Girls in the way that I do so many of the others. And then Brown Shoes is a very pointed criticism of Brother Baxter and his whole thing with wearing brown shoes. It starts the film off, and that's basically Cosmo's welcome to the new school is the whole debacle with his shoes. What did you feel about that scene and about the way that he really leans into it, definitely not going by half, with the little cardboard cutouts of Brother Baxter's face that they're passing out into the audience and all of that. I really like the sort of teenage anarchy that invokes. I love
that they were willing to put their whole band's career on the line doing that. They're like, yeah, this is it. Let's go for it. It was the perfect way to bookend his time there at Sing Street, because I doubt he's coming back, even if the boat trip doesn't work out. But I doubt he's going to be allowed to come back there. But I thought it was great. It was a great way to resolve that matter, and for the headmaster, whatever you want to call him, to get his comeuppance.
And it leads into the emotional the main climax of the movie, which is, of course, when Raphina shows up towards the end of Brown Shoes, I believe, and then they take off. They develop this plan, and Cosmo says goodbye to his mom, who's, I guess, sleeping at the time, and Brendan gets them on the boat. And they set this up earlier, of course, with Raphina and Cosmo going out on the boat, and she's like, "Oh, I'd love to just leave all this behind and go across the way to London." She had a plan with her boyfriend, who completely overlooked her and just, what an asshole, by the way. Let's get that out of the way.
God, and he listens to Phil Collins on top of that.
No, that's the other thing. Like, you see what Raphina's romantic situation is. You realize that she's living at a girl's home, and Cosmo, again, I alluded to this earlier. Initially, he's just like, who is this mysterious woman standing out to the corner? The riddle of the model is all about that, basically, about idealizing and seeing her for who she is. And there's a whole conversation about that, of course. Once you get to know them, then you have to face who they really are and not the vision of that person that's in your head. So little by little, we start to, the veil starts to be pulled back on, Raphina's, what she's actually like and what her situation is. And of course, Brendan picks up on this much earlier than Cosmo does. Right. But I loved the way that played out, and the way that you never knew exactly how that romance was going to end up, because Raphina and Cosmo are in very similar places in a lot of ways, but also in polar opposite places at the same time.
I would say he's definitely much more sure of himself. So he has the self-confidence. And so I think he's perfect, the perfect one to, take her away. That's how it has to be for her. I really enjoy watching Cosmo's transformation in this movie.
Yeah, I do too.
What a beautiful ending, by the way.
Oh, that's the next topic I wanted to get to. So I actually think Ferdia Walsh-Peelo is really great in this, and it's unfortunate that he hasn't really. And again, this film itself didn't really do anything for many of these people. I mean, it looks like he has had a role on Vikings, I guess, the TV show Vikings, which I'm not super familiar with, but I guess he was in that in season 5 of that.
I thought that he was in a zombie TV series too, like
was he?
British, but
he has a lot of presence in this film as far as not only musical talent, but also like in his performance. And I think there's so much underrated work in here from Maria Doyle Kennedy and Aidan Gillen, as you mentioned, Littlefinger, as the parents, and especially Jack Rayner, who really stands out. There's just so much heart and love and passion went into this film, and it really comes across in the story. And John Carney obviously is a musician himself, so this is sort of loosely based on his own experience growing up in Ireland and things like that. And it's, as you said, it radiates such positivity that every time I feel it, like every time I watch it, I get emotional, not just at the ending, but like throughout, just the conversations that they're having about how they're feeling and where they want to go in life and about their dreams and all of that. Like, it really connects with me in a very personal way. That's why when we on Twitter, when you mentioned that you like this, that you love this movie so much, I was like, I think you actually was like, oh, there you go. That's what we need to talk about.
Yeah, it's like, I'll talk about that movie any day. Because like I said, I always describe it as life-affirming. And you can go through my Twitter feed, Facebook feed, or whatever, and Twitter especially, because it's easier to see all my posts in a row. I'll be posting about like this and that, cult films, this cult film, that, horror, sci-fi, fantasy, and then you'll just see like interspersed in their random tweets about Sing Street. So because I'm hoping, and I hashtag it every time, and I'm hoping that like somebody's actually going through Twitter and searching the hashtag Sing Street because they just discovered it and want to see if other people love it like I do. And I'm glad you do.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So much. So let's put a pin in that thought for a second. So let's talk about the ending. So Brendan, actually, they go back to the house and they get Brendan to take them in the boat across, or drive them to the boat at the harbor so that they can take it to London. And of course, I think Jack Rayner's character is kind of caught between, I'm the big brother. My responsibility should be to talk him out of this. But at the same time, he's pursuing the thing that I never had the guts to do, and so he's he's in a way wants his brother to be better than he is. And I think by the end of it probably takes some inspiration from the fact that his brother did that. Like, we don't see what happens after this movie ends, but we presume that Brendan maybe will actually start to get his act together too. I think aren't there some hints at that already late in the film?
I mean, he goes outside and sits on the steps. So he gets out of the house. He gets out of the house for a second.
It's a first step.
I think it was necessary for him to have that breakdown where he does tell Cosmo everything that he went through before Cosmo was even old enough to remember, Right. So I think that was a necessary point for him. And then, yes, I think just seeing and aiding and abetting his brother's escape, I think that's definitely cause to believe that things will get better for him.
So you get the very emotional and cathartic Brendan like cheering his brother on, and like
when he jumps up in the air, that's when I lose it every time.
Yeah.
When he goes, yes, that's when I lose it every time. Yeah.
So you have that moment, which again, like I said, as an older brother, really hits me. And then them on the boat, they almost hit a cruise ship, I think, or some kind of boat, and they have to like have this last minute oh shit moment where they have to avoid that. And then it's raining, and they're just like the look on Cosmo's face when the camera like really cuts to that close up of him. It's just a mix of emotions, but the whole point is that we don't know what comes next for them. They don't know what comes next for them, but it's the perfect ending because the destination is not the point for these characters. The journey is the point, and the fact that they made this leap, and that they're breaking free from what this town and what this world that they live in, what the people in their lives think that they're capable of. And they're like, you know what, we're gonna try it. We're gonna go for it. We don't know. I mean, these people are teenagers. Is this true love? Are they going to end up together forever and be like millionaires in London? I mean, I guess possibly, but it's unlikely rationally, But the point of this movie is that it's not a rational ending. It's an emotional ending. It's a metaphorical ending for they're making it to the other side, And I love it so much. I'm getting like emotional talking about it.
I love that you get it. So the whole point of that is they took the leap. So he's not his brother. She's not her mom. Neither one of them were able to do that. Neither one was able to take that leap, And so that they get it at such a young age bodes well for each of their future, whether or not they're together in that future or completely independent and back in Ireland. So. Yeah.
Right. They took that chance. And I even like the Adam Levine song, Go Now, that plays over that sequence, which Adam Levine, who was appeared in Begin Again. Did you ever actually get a chance to see that one too?
I haven't seen it yet, but
okay.
My brother swears by it and tells me to watch it all the time. But it's John Carney, so it's good.
Exactly. So I've spontaneously tweeted or Facebooked about either Begin Again or Sing Street sporadically over the last few years. And I like that moment and the message of go now, which is what they're doing and all that, which is a little on the nose, but the whole point, this whole movie is so earnest and obviously wearing its heart on its sleeve that I could see some people being cynical, like, this is whatever. This movie is just overly sentimental or whatever. But I have a soft spot for that kind of thing. So it totally worked for me. And I've seen this several times, and every time I see it, I have the same emotional reaction as it sounds like you do.
Mm-hmm. And in the special features on the Blu-ray, Adam Levine's in there, and he said that he watched it and he realized, wow, this is his best movie. So he likes it better than the one he's in, mm-hmm. and he likes it better than Once, which says a lot. And I'm sad that his poll couldn't get this a bigger attention worldwide, a bigger audience. It's too bad. They should have done like a Sing Street theme night on The Voice.
Yeah, there you go. Get the Maroon 5 fans behind this movie. Maybe it would have helped a little bit. It does also seem like, this is what I was saying earlier about, let's put a pin in the thought about other people discovering it. It's starting to seem like Sing Street might be gaining a little more traction as a pop cultural force, because it was so funny that this happened. I think literally last night I saw an article online that the people that made Once transition to a stage musical are working now on Sing Street as a stage musical.
Is it going to happen?
It sounds like it. It sounds like it's going to happen. I mean, it was /film.com, I believe, which is not, it's a more reputable entertainment site. So it's in development, at least. I don't know if it's going to happen, if it's going to be as big as Once and revitalize Sing Street so that people will go back and realize how great this movie is and kick themselves for having slept on it. I hope so. It's obviously early stages, but that to me feels like a sliver of hope that it will explode little by little over the next few years.
Don't toy with my emotions, Rob. You better know what you're talking about, and this better happen. You could see a Broadway cast turning up into like a Tony-winning production. You could easily see it.
The songs are already there. The story's already there. I mean, this would be an easy translation onto stage. So hopefully,
no special effects,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's not like Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. You don't have to worry about the budget.
It's not going to be Sing Street, Turn Off the Dark.
Right. That's the other. I was thinking about doing that reference instead of Harry Potter, and then I'm glad I didn't, because it left it open for you to pick up on that.
Yeah.
So hopefully Sing Street will have a resurgence and become a cult film. I think right now it has a very small cult, but I think them having it on Netflix obviously helped. I mean, that's how you discovered it. So I wish they would put it back on a streaming service, because I think that helps a lot get the word out about this. So hopefully this episode will also whoever listens to this, maybe I'll get some more eyes on Sing Street, because that's, in a way, that's part of what's great about doing the show, is that we get to talk about songs in this episode, but we get to talk about films that aren't being covered really anywhere else, and nobody's talking about Sing Street, and I think there really should be.
Sing Street does have a small fan base right now, but it's a very passionate fan base, and I would hope that those people are like just typing into the search results in Apple Podcast Sing Street, and like Crooked Table is going to come up, and total strangers are going to listen to us talk about this, and they're going to feel the exact same way, I hope, because we've never talked about this movie before now, but we agree on so much, and we pick up on the same points and things like that. So I think it could reach a huge audience if they would just give it the time.
Yep. Well, I mean, the teenage experience and what this film has to say, I think, is such a universal theme. So hopefully that's the case. But I think we've talked about the film pretty thoroughly. Is there anything that I didn't mention that you wanted to talk about before we start wrapping things up?
I think we did a great job. I'm not going to have any regrets. We didn't do this podcast by half.
Exactly, as Raphina would want. So, Dane, thank you so much for coming on the Crooked Table Podcast. Did you want to let people know where they can find you on social media and things like that?
I personally am at Dane Mychal, DaneMychal on Twitter, and at CF3 Pod is the CF3 Podcast. And then you can listen to us at CF3pod.com, or just type in CF3 Podcast into Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. We're on lots of the podcatcher apps, so please take a listen. We have great guests coming up all the time.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely check out CF3. And Dane, thanks so much for coming on the show and giving me a chance to talk about Sing Street. And this was very cathartic for me to because I haven't really covered it on the podcast at all, ever, I don't think. And this was a good opportunity to get, like I said, get the word out about the movie and share my own love for it. So I appreciate having you on.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
All right, great. Thanks, man. If you're interested in joining me on the show to chat about one of your favorite films, head on over to crookedtable.com/guest. Or you can consider supporting the show at patreon.com/crookedtable. Of course, you can always find more podcasts, reviews, videos, and other movie-related goodies over at crookedtable.com. Until next time, this has been the Crooked Table Podcast, and I've been Rob.
This has been a production of crookedtable.com. All rights reserved.
CROOKED.